they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah, I'm addicted.
As a kid, going way back, watching the movies with the guys with big muscles, I was always like, oh, and so I have pictures from as young as I can remember, like flexing my muscles and stuff like that. So I think it was always kind of something that I wanted to do. I had no idea how to get there, obviously, at that particular point, or live in the lifestyle. And then we went through some extreme challenges as I was growing up. My mom had married an individual that wasn't the greatest of human beings. He was an adult bully, essentially, and I built a lot of insecurity at a really pivotal point in my life as a young guy, and I was really, my self-esteem wasn't where it needed to be. I was struggling. Had a lot of insecurities, like I said, and my natural personality is a little bit more introverted, and so I was finding myself just like kind of in like a dark place. And so when I went to college, I ultimately went to a college that didn't have a lot of people in town. It was kind of a culture shock for me. And I was like, what in the world am I going to do with my time? And I found the gym and I said, you know what? Like, I'm going to like really engulf myself in this and see what happens. And maybe I can turn out like some of those guys I see on covers of magazines. Now, keep in mind, I'm 138 pounds at that point. So I'm very thin. And, but I have this big dream and no one's stopping me from it, And so I'm like, okay, within weeks, I am starting to feel so much better. And that was the first thing that happened. It wasn't like automatically overnight you have big muscles and whatnot. It was the confidence and everything that was happening internally with me. And I just dove head deep into that lifestyle of really, fitness and health. And I always tell people I got a bachelor's degree in marketing, but I got a PhD in transforming my body, because I spent about 5 times more time on transforming my body than I did actually the materials in school. But during that time, it totally transformed me inside and out. And, from that moment too, I found my passion, which was helping other people and really using a platform for something positive.
Yeah, can you explain kind of how that felt to go from where you were to where you're at, in terms of, why is it so transformational to be healthy, to look the way you want to look, and to feel, ultimately have control over the one thing you could probably have control over, which is yourself. So
Yeah.
how does that feel for maybe people who aren't in that position right now and don't really understand that?
I think a majority of people that start do it for purposes of wanting to look better. Maybe they have a vacation coming up. Maybe they have a wedding coming up. Maybe they've hit kind of a rock bottom place. I'm speaking to adults at this particular point. But what I'll tell you is the minute that I started on that journey, I took control back of my life. And what I mean by that is, like, I felt like I was in bondage of slight depression, anxiety, darkness, no hope, fear. And when you take that control back with what fitness does and eating better, I know that sounds so elementary, but if you look from the studies of what fitness and healthy eating does, it literally is like a pharmacy in your muscles. And contracting the muscle then releases, protein molecules into the brain that it acts as antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills. So you are constantly more active, and then that then relates to you being more successful in every aspect of your life. It's why I preach it as much as I do, because I just don't even think most people even know what it feels like to actually wake up healthy. They're constantly in this cloud of like not being able to see or feel the way that they want to feel, and then ultimately they're like, I'm too old, or the excuses start coming in.
Yeah, you mentioned, to your point, so a lot of people call it disease, which is dis-ease,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I think that's very true when we think about it. So I remember a few years back, or maybe I think it was reiterated more recently as well, where people are talking about the food pyramid. And I remember a long time ago, I remember that shape. I remember the pyramid. I don't know how old I was. It was somewhere in elementary school, maybe, who
Yeah.
knows? And I remember very specifically that there's all this messaging about this pyramid, right? And they had all this the specific type of foods on each level, what we're supposed to be focused on. And for decades, that was what in the United States was being pushed out, what to eat, what to limit eating. And, recently it turns out to be so-called misleading, or what most of us call a scam. And when you look into it, it was pushed by a lot of these companies and businesses, and there was a lot of corruption involved in it. So from your decades of being in the health industry and focusing on health and fitness, what is the number one problem that's causing this disease upon Americans?
Oh, I think it comes down into two things. I think number one, it's lack of education. And then number two, it's greed. So the people who do have education, if they're not ethically in the place that they need to be, which is first and foremost, helping other people get legitimately healthy, then they are going to essentially prey off of those people. Like, we know that people want it fast. We know that people don't want to work out. We know that people don't want to change. We know that people want to continue eating and drinking the things that they want. But the reality is, if they continue those things, they're going to be where they're at, if not worse. And so we have to have true speakers go in, and ultimately, and that comes in all forms of leadership, and explain that, like, the stuff that we're putting in our bodies and our children's bodies, like, you are setting yourself up for absolute failure on so many aspects. I mean, if your goal is to be the best parent possible, then you need to feed your kids right. And you need to keep them away from all the garbage, because, with the right fuel in their body and activity, these kids have a far chance as far as just being better in school and alertness and focus and athletics, if that's the goal that they want to do. Like, it transcends over so many aspects. And the reality is we're being lazy as a country, and not ultimately, stepping up. The leaders who have the opportunity to teach are putting money before the actual teaching in a lot of situations. There's some good people out there too. I'm not saying that all people are that way, but I would say those are the two things that are causing the biggest issue.
I have two toddlers, and I remember a couple months back, I got up really early in order to make it to the supermarket here, because I had to get something for one of the kids before they go to class. And it was probably 7 a.m. Walked into the supermarket, and I got my little hand cart, walking around, and I see these two parents with a kid in the shopping cart, and the kid's sitting in the front of the shopping cart with something in their hand. So as I get closer, I realize, again, 7 o'clock in the morning, this kid has a cookie in his hand at 7 a.m. with colored sprinkles on it. And it's bright colors, and it looks very attractive and appealing to kids. And not only is the parents providing that to the kid at 7 o'clock in the morning, but I could only imagine what's being fed to the kid throughout the rest of the day for the first 10 or 15 years of their life.
Yeah.
And that's just one anecdote. I mean, I have, being with my kids, we're always at different places. We're at the Y, for example, and on the, I've signed them up for basketball, and you have 7-year-olds on the basketball team who are just learning how to play basketball that are overweight. I mean, overweight. And you imagine, you look at it like, how is it possible for a human being for 7 years, at their first 7 years of their life, to actually accumulate so much fat on their body to the point where they're overweight? And the kids having trouble breathing, going up and down the court. And then I look at the parents, and the parents are in the exact same position, And it's not just a little bit overweight and they're obese. So what that means to me is not appearance wise, but that means is unhealthy, practices, which probably means lack of discipline, lack of self-control. And, there's a lot of stuff out there where, there's all these restaurants that are serving this food that's really tasty or addictive to our palate. You know, it's not good for us, but our tongue likes it. You know, the way I explain it to my kids is that our taste buds may like it, but it's not good for our bodies, not a match or a fit for our bodies. So we don't consume that. You know, just yesterday, I had a back and forth, if you will, with the front desk at my kid's school. She's 4 years old. We walk in, drop her off in the classroom. And what are they serving? They're serving bread soaked in maple syrup. Okay. And they say, oh, we have French toast this morning. Okay. So they're literally feeding kids at 8 a.m. sugar, which is the bread. So it's like, it looks like a sponge. It's completely damp and wet. And it looks like a wet sponge soaked in maple syrup. So now you have kids consuming sugar early in the morning. Number one, it affects their palate. And now they crave that and want that. Number two, now what happens when little kids have sugar? Are they going to be listening? Are they going to be obedient to a certain extent? Are they going to be sitting still? No. So now all of a sudden, the teachers and the parents are so confused. Why are these kids not listening? Because you're feeding them sugar. Why do they have? And then all of a sudden, they diagnose them with ADHD or ADD and all that stuff because they're literally giving them a sugar high. So it's all cause and effect. So, like, what have you seen in terms of parents and how they're feeding their children, and you know, how is that affecting them as they get older?
So we don't have any children of our own, but something that I ask all my clients that have kids is I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And like I remember looking back in my elementary days specifically. So let's go that young. Elementary days, and like how many kids do you remember in your class or the other class that were overweight? I'm not talking just like obese. I'm talking like even overweight. And like I can recall maybe one or two like within 2 or 3 grades, let alone like now you walk into an elementary class and more than 50% of the kids are. Like it is a serious issue that is multiplying and literally going viral. And the issue is, one of the biggest issues with this is like when it comes to drugs, when it comes to alcohol, even some prescription drugs as well, like we look at those things as potential negatives and something that is awful for the body. When we look at food, food is not judged the same way in most settings. Food is something we celebrate with. Food is something that when we're emotional, we do. But a lot of the bad eating happens in private spots, in places where no one else can see that it's going on, where you're going through the fast food line and you're getting, and you got bags of fast food in the back seat, you're eating before bed, ice cream and chips and whatnot, as you're emotional, you're like, that food ends up becoming the drug. It's killing far more people and putting far more people into, you know, those top 10 killers in the United States than any drug or any alcohol, you know, and like, but we as a society, we don't want to talk about this. Like, it's a personal choice. No one is putting a gun or a knife to your head and saying, you got to swallow this food. Like, we're making the choice to eat that food or to feed that food to our children. And ultimately at the end of the day, like I'm as passionate as I am because I care about people and their wellness and seeing them, you know, ultimately become their best selves. And it's just so sad because most people have no idea what that feels like, Michael.
Yeah. And so to your point, I pulled some statistics from the CDC. So this is from the CDC, so it may not be 100% accurate. But the CDC says that the average weight for an American woman 20 years old and up in the United States is 170 pounds. That's 170. Okay. And this is recent information from the CDC. The average BMI, so what is BMI? Body mass index, right?
Yep.
Is 29 in the US is 29.6, which essentially equals overweight or obese. Over 2/3 of adult Americans are deemed obese. Okay, and then the average, and I'm gonna go to men as well. So the average weight for an American woman 20 years old and up is 170 pounds. And that's the average height is 5'3". So at 5'3", the average weight is 170, and the waist average weight is 38 inches. Okay, for male, the average weight, and this seems kind of low to me, the average a weight is 198 pounds for average male at an average height of 5'9" and average waist at 40 inches.
Yeah.
So the statistic for the stat for the women here really stands out to me at 170 pound is an average. And I took my kids to we were at the Legoland water park just a month ago, whatever, and I look around and it's epidemic. It really is an epidemic, and I've watched just so many things happen to Mike. I was at the air show. These two couples are walking down. One of the spouse, whatever, tripped on some wire, and it was almost like slow motion. They were tripping, and there seemed like 4 or 5 seconds where there was opportunity for the other spouse, to catch that person. But there was so much weight on that person, and the momentum just couldn't be reversed, in order to have any sort of athletic ability, if you will, to stop themselves or put their hands down. So they literally fell flat on their face.
Mm-hmm.
And I was holding my kids, so I couldn't go run over and help them when this appeared to be happening in slow motion to me. And just so many situations where people just don't even have a basic athletic ability due to their weight, which prevents them from maybe being as safe as they can be, or being able to help others. So like 170 pounds for average American woman, 200 pounds for average American male at these low height levels. So, what are your thoughts on those statistics?
So I want to touch on a few things. BMI. So for BMI, for instance, like BMI, my BMI is obese. And so we have to also, like, all it is a height weight ratio. And so when you get into athlete world, especially bodybuilder world, or someone that is focused on gaining lean mass, your BMI will come up high, like even to the point where like insurance companies are like, well, your BMI is too high. And then you got to send pictures in and like, dude, like, I'm in good health, but when it comes to normal population, I think for a majority of the population, that number is somewhat accurate. What I wish they would actually move to, now there's more logistics to this, probably a little bit more money, but going in and actually doing legitimate body fat testing through DEXA scan or hydro, whatnot, and get their actual body fat percentage, because what this does is it breaks it down even more so of how much lean mass comparative to body fat they have. And it is a gigantic health indicator instantly, and that goes across the board for every athlete, every individual that may be overweight, or even the people that aren't necessarily overweight, but over fat. And there's a lot of those as well. What I'll tell you is 5'3", 170 is more than likely a female that has over 30% body fat. When we're doing actual body fat percentages, this is just going off thousands of people that we have tested body fat with. People get obsessed with the scale. The scale is an indicator. It's a good baseline thing to watch. We watch inches and body fat before we do the scale, but we do watch it because sometimes people try to lose weight by doing crash diets or starve themselves or way too much cardio or keto or like whatever it is that they're trying to like short term lose a bunch of weight, and they're just focused on the scale and obsessed with that. And I'm not a big pusher in that either. But ultimately, I would tell people, anybody is like, start eating better. You're going to go to the doctor more. You're going to deal with more health issues. You're going to get sick a lot more. If stuff like COVID comes back or another form of something like that, you're putting yourself at a much higher risk for severity. And we saw that in statistics with COVID. And I knew it right when it came out. I was pretty vocal about it. And a lot of people smashed me for it, whatnot. And I just said, hey, I know how the body works. I know how it's created. Like, if we're taking care of our body, it's a defense against stuff that's coming in. And there were people that suffered that were healthy, yes. But a majority of the people, I think it was 78% or almost 80% of every person that was on a ventilator or a severe case or death was obese. Like, that is gigantic. And so, you know, we're talking about death, we're talking about all of that, super severe situations, but I'm also talking about just fullness of life. And you know, hey, if you want to go climb a mountain, you can. If you want to be able to climb your stairs at your house, you can. You don't have to park at the closest parking spot in the parking lot, you know, because you're worried about being winded. We go into the insecurity sides. We work with a lot of relationships and couples. We see how someone being overweight and the insecurity leads to less intimacy. Dude, I can go on for hours about this and the connections between everything. Like, start eating right, start moving more. You will become more confident and your life will become better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And so we touch a little bit on the outdated food pyramid. So let's kind of go over Micah's version of a food pyramid. So let's talk a little bit. Let's kind of take it, if you will, through breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Okay, so for a person who is healthy, wants to maintain their health, or for a person who wants to get healthy, what should an average person eat for breakfast? What should they have for lunch? What should they have for dinner?
Yeah, and so I'm going to break this up even more. I'm not a 3 meal a day person. I'm more of a 3 meal a day person with a few snack meals. And so what we found is, okay, the people that know actually the most about nutrition are typically bodybuilders, because their entire goal is to aesthetically look the very best while internally still being as healthy as possible. I love the performance athletes as well, but performance athletes are really eating for performance, which is a little bit different. If I need to go run a marathon, I'm going to eat different than a bodybuilder per se would eat, because I need that extra fuel. When it comes to just a normal person, let's focus on someone who is wanting to lose fat. That's going to be your bigger base in this topic. You're going to want to look at what we teach is balanced eating, because and I'll get into that in a second, but I'm always looking at the long-term effect of nutrition, not just, hey, I want to get you from point A to point B and then good luck. Because a lot of those people end up then going back to the lazy way of eating and getting, you know, those taste buds for the bad foods back, and then they yo-yo. And I mean, dude, half of your viewers that will watch this have yo-yoed in their life many times, because they're just like, oh my gosh, they get motivated for a little bit and then they lose it. The issue is they're following motivation and not discipline, two very different things. You know, but for breakfast per se, let's maybe some really good oats or steel oats. What we're doing is we're coming off of a fast essentially while we sleep. That is a recovery period of time. I'm a big pusher of doing carbohydrates earlier in the day and then starting to taper them off as I get closer to the night. I look at those as a good fuel source if you eat the right ones at the right times in the right amounts. I'm pairing every single food with a protein source of some sort. Now, this slows down digestion, and then the quality, the importance of protein in your body for hair, nails, muscles, everything, you know, good quality proteins. So that oatmeal could be mixed with some egg whites or a few eggs, and or a quality protein powder if you believe in those and want to do those. Your second meal, you definitely want to start bringing in some veggies in that particular meal. That will also slow down digestion. What we have to stay away from, essentially, Michael, is stuff that is spiking our insulin levels hardcore. Unless you're a bodybuilder and you understand the utilization of carbohydrates close to workout and post-workout and how that works. But we're talking about normal people here. Like, just make sure that each one of those meals has protein. That's a staple. Whether you're eating 3 meals, 4 meals, 5 meals a day, some people eat even more than that. I do, but you know, somewhere between 3 and 5 meals, and try to eat about every 3 hours that you're awake. And eat till you're satisfied, not full. That's also huge. What people do is they go, oh, well, like fasting is gigantic right now. Okay, like, okay, there's some benefits of fasting, and there's going to be a lot of people that may knock me on this. It's fine. Like, if my goal is to look my very best and perform my very best, then I'm eating exactly the way that I should. And when it comes to fasting, especially with somebody my body type, which is more of an ectomorph, you're putting yourself as well. If you got into fasting, you're putting yourself at potential risk for muscle loss and muscle waste. We do not do well, ectomorphs do not do well with long core fasting. Now, if you're fasting for religious purposes or whatever, for sure. But if it's specifically due to weight loss stuff, I am not a big pusher of it. There's some health benefits, but not weight loss stuff. I know I'm going on a lot of stuff. I have enormous amount of information in my mind. I'm trying to touch all bases here. So I had mentioned the closer that you get to bed, taper off your carbohydrates. And when I mean carbohydrates, I mean the more complex carbs. So like a sweet potato, rice, a little bit more starchy of a carb maybe, opposed to or quinoa, something like that. Opposed to a veggie carb, which I treat as a free calorie. And I mean, you literally can eat in a gigantic plate of broccoli, and you're in a state, due to just digestion and the amount of calories that are burned through the digestion of broccoli, that you literally can eat as much broccoli as you want before bed. My wife, every night, the plate is as large as you can imagine, with squash and zucchini and broccoli and then a little piece of chicken. And she maintains and sustains her weight, she has for 14 years, since going through her big journeys, so it's one of those deals where it's like, you need to eat balanced, think about healthy fats, healthy carbs, complex carbs, and protein, and really also, most importantly, go in. And most people may not know what to eat, but they know what not to eat. Like, we know that we can't eat donuts. We know that we can't drink a whole bunch of alcohol. We know that we can't eat pizza all day. Like, we know that. Like, that's like, that thing that's inside of you that says good or bad. Is this good or bad? Like, that you shouldn't be doing that. And so ultimately, I would limit those things as much as humanly possible and start bringing in some healthier options.
What about people who want to finally kind of transform and make some sort of change? So what is the very first step? Because I think a lot of people get paralyzed that they need to immediately start doing CrossFit. They got to go buy new gym clothes. They got to do that. Is it education? Is it mindset? Is it is this with their diet? Like, what is the very first step for someone who's starting to feel really unhealthy mentally and physically, and they want to make the change? Like, what do they do to get them past that, that point where they're paralyzed?
So a majority of the clients that we work with are over 40 at this point. As we've gotten older, our base has gotten a little bit older. And what I'll tell you is at least with that particular base, a majority of them have hit a place, somewhat of a midlife crisis, maybe a rock bottom. Maybe they had someone dear to them pass away due to a heart attack. Maybe they're pre-diabetic. They hit what I call a rock bottom of some sort. And so they have a fear that they're trying to get rid of. And, they are like, okay, I want to do this. Or you have the other group that essentially is like, hey, I have something big coming up and I want to look my best for it. Those are really the largest groups that we work with. And you get that small percentage of people that are already in good shape trying to get to great shape, but that's much smaller group of individuals. And so, what ultimately we sit down and tell them is like, hey, the first thing that has to change is here. They're setting, and if you walk into our gyms, we have thousands of transformations all over the wall of all human beings from all over the world that at one point made an excuse of something. And, we hit over 600,000 pounds lost. I can go to that board, find someone very similar to that person that's sitting across from me and tell them the exact story that this person went through, or an even tougher story than they're dealing with at the moment. And so we got to help them. A lot of times we put belief in them before they believe themselves, and then believe in themselves. So you have that mixed with some education, which is extremely important because you're bombarded, like I mentioned before, you're bombarded with, should I do keto? Should I do CrossFit? Should I do fasting? Should I, what I'll say is if the diet has a name, you shouldn't do it. Like ultimately, because their number one focus, not every trainer's number one focus is making money off of you, or not every educator's number one focus is making money off of you. But you need to make sure that these people are passionate about helping you first. Yeah, you need to pay them for their time, but you need to make sure that their passion is helping you. And that comes in, their daily walk and how they're living and whatnot. Mindset first, then go into some educational pieces, and then ultimately help them build a structure or a schedule. We can talk about goals. We can set all of that. Most people don't actually know how to build realistic goals either. They just go, I want to lose 90 pounds in three months. Like they don't have realistic goals of what true fat loss looks like. They just think about the scale and go, I want to lose this amount of weight, even if I sacrifice half of it in muscle. And so much of what we do is going in and educating them, deconstructing them from things they've already learned or think that they know, and then really get them on a path that has some accountability and ultimately be able to go into their lives and plant some seeds that can help them continue going. And what I'll tell you real quick is, like I mentioned, when I was 18 years old, I had no idea what I was doing. I had read a fitness magazine and I started following like a little nutrition plan, whatnot, that was in it. It was very basic, and started working out. Within 14 days, I felt 100% better. So if you're looking for motivation, start with the discipline and start eliminating those negatives out of your life. And that motivation is like a gigantic snowball going down a hill. It will be, because you feel so good, and then the results start happening, and then you'll get sources from the outside going, man, you look great, what have you been doing? That's kind of how it flows.
And you talk a lot about faith in your businesses and things like that. So how has faith played a role in just your journey, and also how did you intertwine it, in your different businesses?
Yeah, faith has been gigantic for us. I didn't lose my faith, but I turned away from faith for a period of time in my life, throughout my teenage years into my late 20s, really. And I was upset for multiple different reasons that, soon I will share. But ultimately, when I met my wife, like I really knew that like God literally gave me a blessing in her. The first day she met, we hit it off like we were best friends, almost like within minutes of meeting one another. And she set me down and she said, I need to know where you are faith wise. And I told her, and I said I was angry, and I had some mixed feelings and had turned away, and really from that moment on, it was my personal choice to lead with faith. My life got a lot better when I turned back to him, and the discipline that faith has, the principles that faith has, and then me and my wife, about probably a year or two in the business, we were starting to walk really tightly at that particular point. And we said, Lord, this business is yours. We're going to be obedient within this business, but you're driving the wheel and you got it. And we'll navigate through this storm. And I mean, it has been one of the most amazing stories that I could ever share of my life, with her, and the things we've been able to do, the amount of people we've been able to impact. And we started it all out of like a tiny little attic with nothing. And we had to have faith. In the Bible, it talks about, faith as small as the size of a mustard seed, and then seeing that grow, the amount of people not only that we've been able to impact from a physical standpoint. But, you know, we have, for instance, it's opened our heart. We have sponsored a school in Haiti for over 10 years of, we have 80 children there that we take care of every single month, you know, and Lord was very clear to us, like, hey, I mean, we went through recessions and tough times in our business and whatnot, but he said the oil will never run dry. And we've taken care of those kids since that point, you know, with their schooling and some food and whatnot. And I tell you what, I got to go see them, and that was one of the biggest blessings I've ever seen. So everything that we do is intertwined with our foundation. And I'll tell you what, if you run a business with your spouse, like it's a lot. Me and my wife have kind of the same love language, which is time. But what we had to learn is really, really good communication and using a lot of biblical principles within the way that we communicate, because, you know, I mean, sometimes you don't have good days, and it's easy to kind of get into a bickering with the person that's closest to you. And you know, we really try to just walk, you know, what we're talking. And the closer that people get to us, they see that.
Wow, yeah, that's a special position to be in, to be able to work with your spouse, number one, someone you love, and also to help other people. You're in the business of actually helping other people,
Yeah.
which is, I can't think of any other, you know, business that's better than that. You know, making money while helping other people
Yeah.
improve their lives. So kudos to you guys for finding each other and
Thank you.
finding something that you love to do while also
Thank you,
helping
Michael.
humanity.
Thank
That's really unique and a great position, like I mentioned. So talk to me a little bit about Hitch Fit. You know, what is Hitch Fit, your main business, and also Rock Body Retreats?
Awesome. So we'll rewind back to 2005 real quick. And so I'm on MySpace, this platform called MySpace. For all your young viewers, they may not know what that is. But ultimately, it was this social media platform that the algorithms were absolutely fantastic, which means that like whoever was on my friends list had to see my posts. And so I start doing this social media marketing, like bombarding, and I end up growing it to over 150,000 followers on MySpace, huge page. And I'm doing this transformation thing in person with my clients. I hated the retention model. So people that don't know personal training, we're taught from the get-go, the minute you get your certification, ultimately that the goal is to retain Michael as long as humanly possible. Okay, because then there's less risk. I can keep these clients. I don't have turnover with clients. And I'm going, man, no client actually wants that. If they want to stay longer, that's one thing. But like clients want to get to a goal. You know, they want to have all of that. The other thing that the certs don't teach you is nutrition. And even the doctors don't know how to eat either. Like it's not taught there. So anyways, that was before I didn't mention, but it's just frustrating. It's really frustrating. And so ultimately, 05, 06, I get a message on MySpace from this girl that lived up in Canada. And she says, Micah, man, I see all the people that you're helping locally. I just wish that I could work with you. I wish I lived closer. And Michael, like it was a light bulb. And I was like, well, why couldn't I just make you a plan? You can just pay me on PayPal or something. You know, I can't even remember what the platform, probably played PayPal at the time. And I said, I'll make you a little plan and then you can just communicate with me. And fast forward like 12 weeks and the lady lost 30 pounds. And I go, oh my gosh, I have something here. Well, I couldn't find any other online personal trainers anywhere. Like I tried to Google it, you know, like it just wasn't happening. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, if I could be one of the first in this and really try to dominate it, then we have something here. And so I'm doing trial and error for a couple of years there and doing fairly well, just kind of marketing the way I am through MySpace. I met my wife in 2008, late 2008. We launched Hitch Fit online personal training in 2009. And then in August, we opened our first brick and mortar location, Hitch Fit Gym here in Kansas City. We replicate the same exact model we did online, but in person. We became and had the first transformation gym that was in America at that point, running it the way that we were running it. You walk into our gyms now, like I mentioned, there's thousands of pictures across the walls of before before and afters. And, you know, I mean, over 600,000 pounds in 81 countries since we started in that little attic that we were grinding out of. And I mean, it's been absolutely amazing, you know, just to have the opportunity. Most importantly, foundationally, it was always the same, Michael, was, you know, and even our motto was just to help as many people as possible, you know, and that's really what we've devoted our lives to do. Giving education, I'm very passionate about it, but just giving the education, the motivation, and the inspiration, and sometimes hard talk too, hard truth. People need to hear it. You know, I'm not one of those yes people. I'm one of those truth people when it comes to this. But that helped save a lot of people's lives along the way. And then, so we've had that business for 14 years, those two. And then we, a year ago, we partnered with a couple out of Tampa, and really amazing couple doing faith and fitness retreats. And it has been absolutely fantastic. But this last February, I don't know how closely you followed, Michael, we had something really, really tragic happen. Travis, who was our business partner on the other side, him and his wife, Travis passed away during a snowmobile vacation for his birthday. Tragically, this guy was bigger than life. He was a unicorn type of human being, and we really had to make a decision. You know, were we going to carry on with Rockbody, or was it going to be something that, you know, at that particular point we kind of disfuse and maybe, you know, start something different or whatnot, and we continued on with it. And the retreat that was right after, because we were only 40 days out from him passing away, that we had the retreat. It was one of the most unbelievable retreats that we've ever been a part of, spiritually, and just a lot of people were suffering because a lot of people loved him. But that was a very unique thing that we had to go through as well, of navigating losing a close friend, but also a business partner, really during a new venture.
Wow. Yeah. Sorry to hear that about Travis. And so is this kind of where your faith came in as well? You kind of had to make a decision. You're going to carry on the business, you know, in his name, and continue forward regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. So that's so Hitch Fit. So how can people reach you and also learn more about Hitch Fit and Rockbody Retreats? What are the websites for those?
Yeah, so rockbodyretreat.com is the Rockbody side. We have the retreats, and we actually have one in about 35 days. We're doing an adventure retreat in Asheville, North Carolina. So zip lining and whitewater rafting, but also the leveling up stuff that we do at the retreats. They're very different from anything that I've seen so far out in the retreat world. And then we have a conference, the 26th through the 28th there in Tampa, that we're having a speakers conference with a lot of really amazing speakers, and really some leveling up going on there. So that's rockbodyretreat.com. We're building our whole schedule for 2024 with the retreat, so that'll come soon as well. For Hitch Fit, they can go to hitchfit.com. That's our online platform. If you go to hitchfit.com/free gift, we're going to build a really cool free gift for people too that are seeking kind of to lose fat and get healthy, just some knowledge there. So that'll be up here in a few days. And then we have hitchfitgym.com, but that's here locally in Kansas City for the brick and mortars. And then as far as social media, I mean, you can Google my name. I have a very unique name, so you can do that. But Mr. Hitch Fit on Instagram, Hitch Fit on LinkedIn, Micah LaCerte on Facebook.
Awesome. So before we go, can you strike a pose for the viewers? I know they want to see those biceps.
We'll see. I always say right at the end of most podcasts, if you follow me, I always say, all right, guys, what do we got to do? We got to flex and smile. So I need for you to do it too. All right,
let's do it. Ready?
2, 1.
Bam. I gotta get one of those tight t-shirts next time we're
That's right,
chatting.
man. That's right.
Awesome, man. Well, Micah, it's been great. It's been really informative, and I'm hyped up to actually get back in the gym after this. So I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say. That's right, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay, we work hard, then we all play. Yeah.